16 and Away from Home. Chapter 2. Time to Leave Home. September 2nd, 1889. Ma and I finished packing my trunk tonight, and I should be in bed, but I'm too excited to sleep. Tomorrow is the beginning of a great adventure. I want to be a good and sensible student, although I'll probably have to settle for good. Ma says I've never been terribly sensible. Pa prayed for us tonight, and it's comforting to know that the Lord is going to school with us tomorrow. I was awake before daylight. When Pa left for the barn, I got up and dressed. "There's something sad about doing anything for the last time, isn't there, Ma?" I said as we got breakfast. "I won't be making my bed here again until Christmas." "You won't be spilling sugar on my floor again either," Ma replied. "I can't say that I see a great deal of sadness in that." I went to get the broom. "You know what I mean. Things are going to be different." "Yes, I know. We're going to miss you, Mabel, even though I do complain about your carelessness. But I'm glad you have a chance to go to school. If you do well, you may have a school of your own in another 2 years." I contemplated that in silence. A school of my own? Could I really learn enough to do that? Mrs. Porter thought I could, and so did Ma and Pa. I determined that I would not disappoint them. Pa took us to the train. Just before we reached the Clark's place, I asked him to stop. "Pa, you won't forget how much I love you and Ma, will you?" He hugged me tight.
"Of course not," he said huskily. "You're still our little girl. Even if you are a young lady, we'll pray for you every day, and Christmas will be here before you know it."
The excitement of seeing our trunks put on the train and finding our seats carried us through the next few minutes. But when the train began to move and Pa and Mr. Clark faded from view, we looked at each other with apprehension. "I hope you brought your journal with you, Mabel," said Sarah Jane. "I have a feeling you're going to have a lot to say." At the end of our hour's ride, we found no one waiting for us at the train station. "This is not a propitious beginning," Sarah Jane moaned. "Do you think Aunt Rhoda forgot we were coming today and the housekeeper doesn't know?" "I suppose that's possible," I said. "There's nothing we can do but wait. We couldn't carry our trunks even if we knew the way." We sat down on a bench near the depot. Crowds of people passed by, but no one appeared to be looking for two girls. "I'm thinking about panicking," Sarah Jane said. "How long have we been here?" I consulted the big clock over the station. "At least 5 minutes."
"Miss Sarah Jane and Miss Mabel," said a voice beside us. "I'm Jacob. If you'd like to get into the buggy, I'll bring your trunks." We climbed in, and the buggy was soon headed down the tree-lined street. We looked about eagerly to see how much we remembered from the week-long visit we had made years before. "The town doesn't look as big as it used to, does it?" I whispered. "How could something shrink so much in 8 years?" "We've grown, Mabel. Things always look big when you're little. The house will be the same." It was. The big 3-story house with the spiked fence around it was familiar. But it was not Sarah Jane's cousin Laura who opened the door. "Letty, here are the young ladies who will be staying with us," said Jacob. "If you want to take them upstairs, I'll bring the trunks." The housekeeper's head bent ever so slightly in our direction. "Of course. This way, please." Silently, she led the way up the broad staircase and down the corridor. When she stopped abruptly in front of the closed door, I barely missed colliding with her. Sarah Jane, following close behind, banged into me sharply. Letty opened the door. "This is your room. The bathroom is across the hall." She surveyed us coldly. "I will change your towels 3 times a week and your bed linen weekly. You are responsible for your own room. I will clean the bathroom. I do not fetch and carry for able-bodied young ladies. The midday meal is served promptly at 12:15. Please be on time." She spun around and descended the stairs, leaving us gasping after her in astonishment. I knew we'd have a housekeeper looking after us, but I had no idea she'd be so awesome, Sarah Jane finished for me. I don't remember running into her when we were here before, but Aunt Rhoda says she's been with them forever.
Do you suppose she'll get used to us? I expect so. Ma says a person can get used to anything if he has to. We walked around our room, peering into the closet and dresser drawers. Aunt Rhoda had furnished the room with a big 4-poster bed, a bookcase, a rocker, and 2 desks. The window looked out over the backyard and we could see the big barn. Remember how disappointed we were when we learned there weren't any cows or chickens in that barn? I said with a laugh. Yes, and how we didn't dare go outside that fence for fear we'd get lost. And here we are, grown up, and on our own. Almost. We sat down on the bed. I don't think she likes us much, Sarah Jane added. I knew the she referred to Letty. I wonder why, Sarah Jane continued. Aunt Rhoda must have talked it over with her before we came. She may be a good housekeeper, but she's so imposing. Maybe she's not used to having girls underfoot anymore. This is one girl who won't be under her foot, Sarah Jane stated grimly. Believe me, I'll give her all the room she needs. At that moment, Jacob appeared in the doorway with my trunk. Here you are, young lady. I'll be back with the other one. He turned and looked at us kindly. She's a hard one, is Letty, but she's fair. You'll get used to her ways. A friend amongst Philistines, I said after Jacob disappeared. I'm glad he lives here too. A clock struck in the lower regions of the house and we jumped up quickly. We'd better wash and straighten our hair, Sarah Jane gasped. It won't do to be late. She'd probably take all the food back to the kitchen by 12:16 if we weren't there. The table was set with just 2 plates, and we took our places silently. Letty put the food before us and disappeared. Aren't Letty and Jacob going to eat with us? They eat in the kitchen, I guess. Sarah Jane looked around the big dining room. When you're used to eating with a family, this seems pretty bleak. I nodded. I suppose it wouldn't be a good thing to ask if we could eat in the kitchen with them, would it? We knew it wouldn't, so we said our own blessing and ate our meal. Are we going to survive 10 whole months of this? Sarah Jane wondered. Yes, we are, I told her. We came here to go to school because the Lord made a way for us. This is just one of the all things that is going to work for our good, although I admit I don't quite see how. If you young ladies have finished, I would like to clear the table. The chilly voice of Letty moved us quickly from our chairs. Can we help you with the dishes? Sarah Jane asked. I do not require help, Letty answered stiffly. Young ladies of breeding do not work in the kitchen. We walked slowly out to the porch that surrounded the house on 3 sides. I started to sit down on the top step when Sarah Jane grabbed me. Young ladies of breeding do not sit on porch steps. She mimicked Letty's tone so perfectly that I had to laugh. It's not funny, Mabel. She knows very well that we both grew up in a kitchen full of dishes to wash. For some reason, she resents our being here. Why don't we go and look at the school, even if it isn't open yet? I suggested. We should find out where it is. We'll have to ask direction, and I'm going to think several times before I bother Letty. Let's see if we can find Jacob. Jacob was in the barn and was glad to help. Do you want to know the quick way to get there or the ladylike route? Both, Sarah Jane answered. What makes the fast way unladylike? Jacob's eyes twinkled. I'll let you find that out. Follow that little path through the wooded area. When you come to a clearing, you're on the back of the school campus. If you want to come back the other way, follow the road in front of the classroom building east until you come to a fork. Take the left fork and it will bring you right back here. The path through the woods was lovely and shady. It looks well used. I can't see anything unladylike about it. Can you? I asked. Jacob must have been mistaken, Sarah Jane said. Then she stopped as we both spotted a fence. You might know the school would be surrounded by a fence, I said. We can't step over that. The split rail fence was waist high. In order to get to the other side, it would be necessary to lift our skirts at least to our knees. We've never let that stop us before, Sarah Jane decided, and in a moment she was on the other side. I followed quickly, but not before I looked around carefully to see that no one was in sight. That isn't exactly the most graceful thing a lady can do, I said. I suppose once we're through school, we won't be able to jump fences any longer. I don't want to think about it, Sarah Jane said. Let's go look at the school. We stood and gazed at the 3-storied building in silence. There appeared to be no one around, but the big front doors were open, and we went in. "I never thought I'd be going to a school I could get lost in," I said. "How many rooms do you suppose it has?" "There are 6 on this floor," Sarah Jane counted, "so there are probably 12 more above us. If we have a different room for every class, that's going to take some getting used to."
"Good afternoon, ladies. Were you looking for someone?"
We whirled around to see a tall, stately gentleman in a frock coat. No, sir," I stammered. "We were just looking at the building."
"Very well."
He turned and disappeared into the room behind us. We scuttled out the front entrance and across the campus.
"Is there anyone in this town who doesn't look as though he might break if he bent over?" Sarah Jane wanted to know. "Is perfect posture something we have to know to get out of school?"
"If it is, I hope the icy voice doesn't go with it," I declared. "I wonder who he is."
"We'll ask Jacob. Let's go unpack our trunks while we still want to stay," she suggested. "Maybe we'll feel more at home."
Jacob was glad to fill us in.
"That would be Mr. Kingman, the principal. He also teaches history, so you'll be seeing more of him."
I wasn't sure whether that was something to look forward to or not. "Are you getting tired of being called a young lady?" I asked Sarah Jane as we put our things away. She nodded. "I thought not being a child any longer was a good idea. Now I'm ready to change my mind." As we got ready for bed, she brought up a subject I had been thinking about.
"You know, Mabel, I've never gone to bed without having prayers. What are we going to do without our folks to pray with us?"
Suddenly, the picture of Pa taking the Bible from the top of the china cupboard was so vivid that I felt terribly homesick. "Why, there isn't any reason that we can't have our own," I decided. "We can take turns reading, Sarah Jane, and we both know how to pray." When we had finished, I felt comforted and better able to face what lay ahead, but I might not have fallen asleep so peacefully had I known what the next day would bring. End of chapter 2.